Hello, hello. So now I'm doing this sharing live. I found it is most easy and also authentic way to put it out there. And I wasn't sharing in a long time, and especially in English. So sorry if some of my language will be imprecise because it is not my native language. But yes, I was sharing about it in my Lithuanian language, and now I feel also inspired to put this type of sharing on international arena. So it is based on my deep experience. So everything that I gonna say, I do not claim as absolute truth. It is just based on my experience, but yes, it is very sincere experience. Yeah, I mentioned on the title Bentinho Massaro because this phenomena that is happening around this teacher, around this person, inspired me to share about it because I had also similar experience with similar teacher, not so much popular, but yeah, the dynamics and that character of the teaching was very very similar. And once those instaguru episodes came out in Mark Vincente channel, so yeah, I watched them and they helped me to more deeply process what I was going through in that group. In another group that was called True Global Family, where around the main, also as a teacher, as a leader, John. I don't know how he is and his community, his family at this moment, because I blocked them several years ago when I separated myself from them. But for 2 years, I had a relationship with that family, with that spiritual family that I was seeking and felt, and it seemed like, yeah, I was belonging because I was searching. Some people who will resonate to me and where I could belong at that time. But later on, while being in that relationship, I started to sense that inner separation where, yeah, some spiritual poisons came into equation alongside with a very pure and in a sense sincere spiritual teachings and sharings and stories in that group and through that leader of that group. So I also mentioned on the title separating poison from medicine. And yeah, I feel that it is very important topic to talk about, and also that applies on the Bentinho Massaro topic because there are similar things going on. And yeah, I would like to dive deep about the nature of spiritual ego and self-deception. It is a very fascinating topic for me, how human psyche interacts and relates to very high and maybe transcendent spiritual realizations and experiences. Yeah, so it is very, very interesting topic. I think it is also somewhere called transpersonal psychology, and especially in spirituality, the ego is most subtle. That's why it is most dangerous territory to walk through. But I was walking through that territory. I was lived through that subtle spiritual manipulation, and yeah, and it took me also several years to unravel this experience, and now I feel very grateful for that experience. I feel healed, and yes, integrated those experiences, all that losses and sufferings that I was facing back then now became like gifts. And yeah, those things matured me into better alignment with myself, with my inner compass. So that's why this sharing will not be just black versus white, how I see a lot of the sharings that are going on about Bentinho Massaro, where some people still feel traumatized and angry and blaming him, others like protecting him and justifying everything about him, like his team or other followers of him. Some, yeah, are more neutral, who just studies and yeah, like Mark Vincente, just attempts to explain how manipulation in high control groups works. So yeah, there are many interesting perspectives around this. Yeah, and I would love to add mine. So yeah, so how do I see those type of teachers? Yeah, because there are also sometimes questions: are they deliberately manipulative and like evil, or they are just unconscious, dysregulated, and delusional? So I see that also there are both of these that are playing out in their behavior and in their interior. How I deeply, again, this is my perspective, but I have studied it thoroughly, and yeah, this is how I feel and think about them. That yes, some of their behaviors can be classified as sociopathical or even psychopathical, like that, called manipulation with high intellect and so on. That's how their brains works on certain areas in their life. But also there are also unconscious part of them that does not recognize some misbehaviors as misbehaviors, for example, because they are automatically justified in their brain as some kind of tough love or devotion or spiritual gifts and teachings. And I also have a text that I will go into later through the points, through the important points. But first, I want to share just now, live from the heart, how I feel about this matter, how I see it in this moment, because also that perspective and process deepens. So, yeah, about the spiritual ego. So, we as humans naturally go through maturing process as humans, as human beings, as individuals, as even personalities. And sometimes, yes, that process is challenging because we live in very imperfect world in a sense. Yeah, it is not in the absolute sense. In the absolute sense, everything is perfect and everything serves in certain ways. But yes, in general, it is not an idealistic world filled with unconditional love, consciously embodied by majority of people. So yeah, it is challenging to navigate this experience, and usually in our childhood we had different traumas and maybe feelings of shame, insignificance. We also uh, have various wants and needs that develop when we are growing up. For example, yes, when we become teenagers and up to the later age of like 30s and so on, we usually have a big sexual drive. We have various fears, various desires, maybe unfulfilled desires. Usually at the younger age, we want to have more power, more control, more better life, again, to secure for ourselves good life, which also can be challenging to have in this world. So then our ego searches for different ways how to get more of what we want, what he wants as that ego, and get away from what he is afraid. And for the most part, that process happens unconsciously or subconsciously, even though at the surface level we can create various systems of logic and justification and so on, but the base can still be unacknowledged, and it can be based on, yeah, certain feelings, certain traumas, or so on that we subconsciously, unconsciously don't want to face. And yeah, sometimes we want to be like indestructible in our psychological structure. That's how we can take very high spiritual teachings, various non-duality teachings, all the or the channeling teachings. That is really very, very powerful teachings. There are very, very powerful truths and information there, and all of that is freely available nowadays. So when someone which is undeveloped as a decent human being takes those teachings, it can easily he can easily twist those teachings in various toxic manipulative ways, and first of all against itself. So how I see those kind of teachers like Bentinho, or as I mentioned John, that we are first of all deceiving themselves. We are compartmentalizing themselves from their inner child, and that inner child for the most part acts unconsciously in various toxic ways to get the attention, but yeah, it thinks that it needs to get attention and everything in its own way, but not in a way that would actually heal it. And that's why I saw, yeah, that basically underneath all that big God complex or Messiah complex, or yeah, that big spiritual ego is inner terror that makes a lot of noise inside. And that's why, as I saw in my teacher, and when I saw also Bentinho, even in his public events like retreats videos, or how others shared from inner circle, they regularly have those like I don't know how it's called in English, but like anger tantrums, yeah, something like that. Yeah, those type of expressions, that like explosive expressions that they justify as, yeah, divine fury or something like that in that nature. And then we are very much attached to silence. So yeah, with my teacher, it was, yeah, always that emotional roller coaster from going extremely joyful and positive and shouting from joy, then shouting from anger, and like beating your ego, and then going into silence and sitting in the silence for 3 hours each day, and making silence calls and so on. It's nothing wrong with silence. I also love silence, and I understand the importance of it. But I see in those teachers that, yeah, it is something that can be called as spiritual bypassing. And that means that when we go into meditation, into silence, we just bypass their personality, seeing it as insignificant, something that doesn't need, doesn't worthy of attention, and we are just going through that. And I saw also that this one of the main methods of Bentinho Massaro is called neti, not this, not that. So whatever arises, I just acknowledge that I am not this. So it is like, yeah, dissociating from all appearances, all names, all forms, and just recognizing that purest oneness of existence, awareness, absolute. Yeah, it is also good method to clarify that sense of pure unified self, but if we do not integrate that sense into our personality and correctly integrate into our personality, that would assist its natural development process, then this method becomes just avoidance, just codependent habit, similar like drugs. Yeah, because you do not face that inner terror inside, you constantly go to bypass that and go into that peaceful state. Because yes, you can find peace for some time. Yes, you can bypass that inner noise and you can rest in that state of peace, in that state of impersonal freedom. However, very still, that conscience deep inside that cannot be truly silenced. And yeah, sooner or later it must be faced, everything must be acknowledged. Yeah, I truly believe that there is no way to bypass yourself, because that deepest conscience is what is true, what we are, and all that other unintegrated content of our experience, it is still there. And yeah, it makes noise, and sometimes that noise goes outside, like those, as I mentioned, tantrums, or yeah, those attacks that is justified as spiritual teachings. And those mostly happen on more inner circle. In a similar way, we can see how, for example, parents are shouting or even beating their children because it is there are no consequences in that. We feel safe to release that energy on those closed ones. Yeah, so this is what is actually happening and masking itself with a holy mask. And that is most deceiving for the same manipulator, because it can justify everything, all misalignments, with that deepest conscience is justified. And for example, the same ego, the same malignant narcissistic behavior can be for a businessman, but a businessman can feel deep inside and acknowledge deep inside that maybe he is acting selfishly, maybe he is afraid. So yeah, it is easier for such a person to acknowledge those facts, but for a spiritual ego it is almost impossible. Yes, and still with that mixed with that were usually also a lot of good things like teachings. Yeah, I also benefited from Bentinho Massaro teachings that I follow throughout many years, but I was also following other teachings. I am very, very curious to see from many different perspectives. I'm also acting as a spiritual teaching teacher, but more locally, where I live in Lithuania, in my native language. You're also making art and other things. But yes, in my constitution, I am always doing my best to be in the beginner's mind, and I always seeking new wisdom, new teachings, and not only from other spiritual teachers, also from maybe simple people that are not spiritual. They are also have a lot of gifts. So where I was going with that. Yeah, so when I explored those different teachings, I saw, I began to discern various differences between how does that teaching is being delivered. So I see difference when the same truths can be delivered in a very different way, in a more compassionate, gentle, empathic way, and when it is delivered more brutally, and like I see, yeah, in those teachers as Bentinho and so on. And and I saw that this does not work, like shouting at people and forcing, like get over it and just separate from it, and just do it and so on. So it can boost also a seeker's ego, because he can follow those instructions and feel like it transcended something, and it become more empowered, but it does not really heal the deepest wounds of the heart, because most of the people are like small children in pain in some senses. Yes, we all, many of us carry those deep wounds in our hearts, and so you would not normally shout at your child who is in pain, like, stop it, what are you doing? Be empowered, transcend that. No, that does not work. Yeah, in this example, it is very clear that does not work to process and heal that emotion, that experience, and that does not also foster, as I said, natural development that takes time. So I saw that Bentinho and yeah, again, similar teachers are very impatient. We are very forceful. Like there's not enough time. This life is short. You are on the mission. The whole world is waiting for you, and just creating pressure. And yes, and the more those inner circles. As I was in that spiritual family, there are many different also manipulations takes place where that leader starts to live your life. It starts to make decisions for yourself, like separate from those friends, and later on separate from your family. We are just trying to isolate you, to own you, or doing other things. Yes, like that psychological, how it is called, abuse, or financial abuse, like give your money and trust your money to your family. This is how you become more empowered. You need to face your fear to give, and just to be free, and to receive more, and so on. We can always find justifications for those manipulations, for those abuses. So this is what was going on. But together with that, there was, as I said, also, yes, some things that truly felt like pure energy transference, like some deep stories, which is really empowering, some deep teachings, some deep satsangs and shared experiences, which do not devalue. I also read Bentinho's book. I don't remember how it's called, but Conversations with Skeptics, Skeptic, I think. And yeah, I enjoyed this book. There are some good things in that book. So yeah, even that person who has an integrated shadow aspect, he still can pronounce deep and even precise techniques and truths and experiences to you, from which you can benefit, but that is also infused with some poisons, with their, yeah, again, an integrated shadow. That is why it is truly a school where you are learning to separate those things, separating medicine from poison. And yes, in that sense, they are great teachers, even not in the way we think about themselves. Yes, they are those kinds of shadow teachers, which teach us their victims to ultimately get in a deeper touch with themselves. Of course, it does not justify the, again, consequences, the various traumas and losses that can happen in those type of dynamics, or even that when people really get trapped in that ideology, in that way of living for a very long time, even for a whole life, we can be trapped just as their leaders are trapped in their own prison. So yeah, there is also that, and in that sense, those things need to be exposed, those things need to be challenged, and various how again abuses need to be stopped, especially if true harm is being done to people. Yes, those people need to be stopped. But yes, on the light side, those who can awaken from that dream, those who can learn to separate poison from medicine, yeah, those become much better versions of themselves, because those type of people get in those toxic dynamics in the first place because they had self-doubt, and those teachers used that self-doubt in their advantage. So yeah, I also felt that, as I said, the more I was with that group, the more I started to feel like I am splitting into two selves, and they are started to battle each other. Sometimes one takes it off, sometimes the other, and yeah, it was that constant inner conflict that was going on, because yes, those teachers usually define that you need to overcome that ego, especially those who are basing on Advaita, non-duality. We are all constantly checking who is talking. Is it your mind? Are you your mind, or are you pure space? And yes, always demonizing your mind, or it can be called as the matrix, and so on. That you need to be free from. But there is also a healthy portion of ego, which actually we need to harmoniously operate in our everyday life. And we need that healthy portion of ego also to discern and get free from toxic relationships, toxic codependent relationships, even if they are very spiritual. So yeah, but ego can also be inflated. It can easily be like inflammation. It can be like a balloon that can expand even when we get some compliments or achieve something or get higher wisdom. Our ego naturally tends to take all of those things to expand itself and feel that it has more advantage against the rest of the world. So that's why we need to be on watch of that tendency, and always every day put out that air from this balloon of ego. Yeah, the prevention from being manipulated by your own spiritual ego is just to acknowledge that on the daily basis. Just face it when it arises. Be willing to face it. Be willing to admit that you can sometimes act from that place, that you can sometimes act from trauma. Yes, you can do mistakes, even though that in essence you are perfect and pure on in this body, in this conditioning in this world. Yes, it is natural to do mistakes and to be vulnerable. or sometimes to be arrogant or ignorant. So yeah, when we are willing to face and acknowledge those things in our interior life, yes, it is natural prevention from that inflammation. So in my process, yes, I had the spine, but yes, that inner conflict and that constant pushing and pulling from my teacher and his also followers, yeah, was like a catalyst for me to really go deep into my spine, to really feel my spine, to really calibrate my inner compass like never before. It was natural maturing process. Now I see it as initiation because after I left, my life has changed in many best ways that it could. Yeah, I synchronized myself with my beloved partner with which I live happy life. And she also at that time for a while was living in a toxic relationship with her partner, but yeah, we were friends for a while, but then I started to feel that very strong suddenly, after some years I started to feel that strong attraction and deep love from the heart. And when we started to commune on a deeper level, and that helped her to also make changes in her life, and she was making changes also. So we were both maturing in those different arenas. But yeah, when we came to the ripeness, we joined. And yeah, and then many positive synchronicities happened and still happening. But when I was on that community, it was opposite. Many misalignments with reality. I see how I was guided don't match my direct experience in my well-being, in my relationship to the rest of the world. It was very confusing. Even that relationship with teacher was very confusing. But yes, there are sessions where it is like you're being beaten. Your ego is being beaten, and yeah, and after a while you feel exhausted from that, and you feel exhausted from that inner conflict where your true conscience fights that authority, that outer authority that tries to infiltrate your life. And yeah, in those moments of exhaustion, when I surrendered, then yes, then I was embraced with love in that community, and I felt relief. And this is how this toxic codependence can form. Yeah, sometimes I just wanted to give up everything, and yeah, and just to be in peace. But I saw that this peace is not integrated. in this world. Yeah, it is like spiritual bypassing. When relationship with world is formed from artificial place of spiritual ego. Like you are thinking that you start to think that you are special, that you are channel for God. For God, you cannot be treated the same as other people, and so on. That's how those teachers also feel about themselves. We see everything as their own chess game, where in their experience they are seemingly try to win it against the dark forces or the matrix or so on. Yeah, even those movies as Matrix can be interpreted in very twisted ways. So yeah, that is what I wanted to share just through live word. And now I will open my written word. Let's see. Okay, the live is going on. So I will read some points that will clarify what we are talking about. And yeah, before that, I also want to mention that yes, for those especially who was abused and still traumatized by the Bentinho or similar teachers, that yeah, it is good to acknowledge that you are still on the healing and integration process. And I think also that fury, that anger that comes out of it is also healthy in many ways, because yeah, it puts us from our comfort zone, and then we can speak out and warn others and connect with others. So I see that also that portion of anger as very healthy, but deep inside I wish for you that you will find a way to truly forgive those abusers, and not put them completely on the category of evil or something like that, because I believe and I truly see in my deepest experience that deep inside we are all innocent. We are all children of the divine. And there is always that sincerity, that conscience that is always intact. It's just trapped around those big complexes of ego and trauma. And yeah, there are many, many, many layers of that which hides that purest part of ourselves, which is the same for everyone. So I wish for you to see through all those layers, through all those experiences and traumas, both yours and yeah, and others, and bless that purest part in yourself and in that teacher. Wish for him that he will have the most auspicious transformation and awakening, which he does not expect now because he thinks that he is fully awakened. So that's how they fool themselves. They truly convince themselves that they are fully awakened, and no one can make them back, put them to sleep. Yeah, those teachers are usually lacking that feminine, receptive, empathic qualities. We just get their way and they apply their way on everything. Yeah, it is more forceful. Yeah, that imbalance in masculine energy. Yeah, I didn't saw any woman teacher who is like that. Usually also happens in masculine body, but it can also happen on feminine body. I know that there are some kind of evil witches that are also using black magic to manipulate other people, because I also work with such people who get out of more how to say more raw groups of control and manipulation, which is more obvious. Some groups are more obviously evil in their behavior, but they are using different means to control people, usually through fear, through yeah various again forget the word, but yeah, basically fear and black magic. So I will not go deep into that for now. Just wanted to mention that, and yeah, to see still everyone as pure human being deep inside, and when we see that, we can really start to feel compassion, genuine compassion, even for that abuser, and forgiveness, and then extracting what gold you can take from experience with them. Yeah, it is all about that. Taking gold from the mud, separating medicine from poison, because they are usually interconnected. It is the process of alchemy. And I am always also assisting people in that process of inner alchemy. You can also reach out to me. I can also do sessions on English. I'm getting better at it. And yes, and then when you are truly healed, yes, then you can feel also gratitude for those abusers, for those teachers, and you can see both light and dark in them. That they are not just in one category. There is always a mix. There is always a mix of yin and yang in different proportions in each person. Yeah, so when there are some imbalances, some ignorance, usually yes, that in a relationship appears as toxic. But everyone is on the journey and everything changes. So nothing is fixed like that forever. So just bless your own healing journey, the transformational journey of those teachers and their teammates and so on. And see how much good you can extract also from them, even from their teachings. When you are healed, yeah, when I feel healed, I can also take a book of Bentinho, read it, and maybe get something that is genuinely good for me. So yeah, I cannot deny that. But yes, but usually his followers take that. They are just like taking those 90, for example, percents of high quality spiritual teachings and transformations that they are experienced by applying those teachings, and they are just ignoring that, for example, 10% of toxicity, misbehavior, and sometimes, yeah, we justify that and take that as their own. So in a sense, the sincere follower of such teacher eventually becomes like that teacher, like mini version, like a mini me in that movie, Austin Powers. Yeah, I see those groups like that. Like there is one big me and many small mini me's that are talking like that big one. Yeah. So I saw that I was also seeking like father figure, because my father didn't wasn't a good example for me. So yeah, I was searching for that. I searching for my own expression, for my own identity, even as that spiritual teacher in others. Yeah, and it is natural process to copy others who are seemingly louder or seemingly more confident, more stable, even though that stability is still just apparent, but based on something that is very unstable. That is why being around such teachers is very disturbing. And I always felt that sensation in my stomach that was felt awful. But we need to trust that it tells something. Yeah, for discernment, we also need to check everything both on our head, on our heart, and on our stomach. Those are three basic centers and filters for what is actually going on. So if one center feels off, you need to investigate and check out and see it from as many perspectives as you can. Do not just rely on explanation that one of your teachers gave you. Check out with others and see what is more resonating to you. Yeah, so I saw like how I was starting to become like those teachers, but and maybe I took something from them, because yeah, those kind of teachers usually have a lot of fiery energy, and I feel that for me fire and earth elements is elements that I need to cultivate in this life, that my more innate elements in this composure, in this body, in the soul, maybe in this life, are water and air. So yeah, I naturally seek examples, for example, of fire, of fiery person. And yeah, I feel like interacting with such a person, I start to awaken more, cultivate more my own inner fire. Yeah, and maybe I took something from that, but when I also saw that this fire in them is not harmonious, it is not balanced. Because yes, it can be balanced tough love, yeah, that severity, yeah, it has its own place even in spiritual teaching. Sometimes, yes, it is the best thing to be severe, to be more tough, to be more like even shouting when you need to, when you see that you need to um, get attention on something that is important. But usually it is very, very ephemeral in balanced way. It is tool that you take rarely. The more is compassionate and gentle way appropriate for us. Yeah, it is always balance between severity and like mercy. But yeah, what I saw in those teachers that they are like overusing that part of severity, and it is like bullying. Yeah, like in school, someone just projects and releases its trauma, its toxic energy on you. But in the spiritual arena, everything is justified and seen as sacred process that you are being trained to accept as such. You are being trained to accept, yeah, yourself as basically a victim, but not seeing yourself as victim. Yeah, deep inside you are accepting the role of the victim, but on the outside or on the more surface level, you are seeing yourself as empowered and free. Like, yeah, nothing belongs to you. You are one, and so on. So, yeah, many things are coming out in this sharing, and it is a long sharing. So, thank you very much for staying around and being patient with my imperfect language. So, yeah, I will also read a text now. Maybe not everything, but yeah, just to educate. So yeah, those kind of teachers are usually fall under umbrella called malignant narcissism. And here is a definition. Malignant narcissism includes the following traits: grandiose, self centered, feeling privileged, and believing that we are special, superior to others, and that others must admire and respect them unconditionally. It includes borderline sociopathic and even psychopathic tendencies, paranoid neediness, extreme paranoia, and in some cases, aggression. It is a personality disorder characterized by an inflated ego, lack of empathy, manipulation, and a constant desire for power and control. So here are also points that define, yeah, for example, I am the law. Such people sincerely believe that the moral rules of mere mortals do not apply to them. Pain as love. Since the narcissist cannot make mistakes, any of his toxic behavior, yelling, manipulation, emotional abuse, is instantly transformed in his own mind into a deep spiritual lesson or tough love designed to destroy the follower's ego. Second, spiritual bypass and spiritual psychosis. A great danger exists in spiritual pursuits. When a person experiences genuine spiritual insights, such as sense of oneness of the universe, but his personal ego is not fully mature or integrated, inflation occurs. The ego appropriates spiritual truths and says, if everything is God and I am God, then my anger is also God's will. Again, sometimes it can be, but sometimes it can be something else. This creates a bulletproof logical system. Any criticism from the outside is interpreted as the critic's low level of consciousness or inability to understand higher truth. So yeah, this is what is going on. We are creating that bulletproof logical system that works automatically and deceives themselves. Yes, because it was developed unconsciously. And reinforced with those same spiritual truths that ought to free them from that. So yeah, that is why it is so dangerous, so detrimental. And third point, gaslighting oneself, self-deception. Strategic thinking and emotional outbursts go hand in hand when a person has strong defense mechanisms. Strategy. He knows exactly how to create an image on stage because he craves power, recognition, and resources. Tautology. After the seminar is over and he bursts out in anger at his loved ones, his mind creates a rationalization in a matter of seconds. He doesn't think he did anything wrong. He generally feels like a sacrificing teacher who has to carry a heavy burden and cleanse other people's karma of negativity. Why do they seem so sincere? They seem sincere because they are not lying at that moment. For example, when Massaro talks about divine love, he feels that state. However, this state in his personality is completely separated, dissociated from his behavior with real people in everyday life. This is the ability to live in complete internal division, which the person himself perceives as absolute freedom. This is how such people experience themselves from the inside. This is how such a person experiences themselves from the inside and what really is hidden behind their facade. Yeah, and just want to inject one point that what helped me to discern the truth that I also was following other spiritual teachers who are more heart-based, like that incorrect way, heart-based, empathic, like Matt Kahn, whose focus is also to not so much to awaken, to help people awaken from their ego, but to integrate that awakened perspective into the reality of ego and human relationships and so on. So, yeah, this reference helped me a lot. Also, Jeff Foster, who was awakened by the Lyme disease from his own spiritual ego manipulations. So yeah, it is always good to have more perspectives and see what is more resonant and in alignment with actual reality of your experience, your everyday relational experience. So yeah, this is how they, yeah, I was exploring how they are experiencing themselves from the inside. So first point, radical internal division, compartmentalization. A healthy person strives for wholeness. If I teach about love, I try to act lovingly. Such teachers have a strict isolation in their psyche. When they are on stage, they experience a trance state in which they feel an absolute connection with energy flow or God. At that moment, they feel like they are pure light. When they get off stage and scream at their assistant, their mind places this action in completely different drawer. We do not experience a contradiction because their ego says on stage, I am the teacher, and behind the scene, I am the lightning that burns your egoism. They do not perceive themselves as hypocrites because these two states simply do not meet in their consciousness. But of course, in Bentinho example, we can see that even he lashes out even on the stage, and especially on more private stage and the retreats. So yeah, again, I see that those teachings don't truly work on the long run. They only help to boost the seeker's ego, but not to actually heal him or integrate his ego. Because how you can integrate your ego when it is seen, as Bentinho said, as a gremlin, when it's sought as an enemy, or anyone who contradicts the truth of the teacher seen as like possessed of a negative entity. So again, we put those labels on the essential part which is needed for our human experience. And that part, yes, it can be toxic, but it can also be healed and integrated through true love. Okay, second point, God syndrome and a sense of omnipotence. When interacting with thousands of followers who look at you with adoration, the human brain receives huge dose of dopamine and power. Over time, their internal monologue becomes as follows: I am a tool turns into I am the source. At first, the teacher may think that he is only transmitting the truth. Later, fed by followers, he begins to believe that he himself is that truth. Criticism as darkness. If someone contradicts him, his mind interprets this not as a mistake but as an attack of darkness against the light. Therefore, any anger or attack on his part seems to him like the holy war, a defense and completely justified act. Third point, complete dissonance of empathy. They experience emotions, but these emotions are forced only on themselves, focused only on themselves. When such a teacher cries on stage while talking about love, he cries because of his own sense of grandeur and beauty, not because of a deep connection with another person. They see other people as actors in their own spiritual theater. If you agree with me, you are an advanced soul. If you criticize me or show me my limits, you are unawakened, ego driven, or toxic. This completely eliminates the possibility of feeling true compassion of their inner circle, for their inner circle. They sincerely believe that the pain they cause others is a spiritual gift to those people. Fourth point, inner horror and emptiness, which I mentioned before, which is never admitted. Psychologically, beneath this grandiose spiritual ego, there is usually a deep sense of shame, insignificance, or trauma experienced in early childhood. In order to survive, their psyche has created an impenetrable, impenetrable, impenetrable spiritual armor, to accept the fact that we are a simple, fallible, sometimes angry or weak person is tantamount to psychic death for such a personality. It would cause such a strong internal collapse that their mind will do anything: manipulate, gaslight, scream, create new philosophies just to protect this illusion of spiritual greatness. So, from the inside, they see themselves as tragic heroes, spiritual martyrs who bring the light of truth to the world, suffering from an unreasonable environment, and are forced to use harsh means to try to wake people up. This is an absolute hermetic illusion from which it is almost impossible to get out of voluntarily, because the very lifeline, intellect, and spiritual knowledge is used to strengthen the illusion. That's why we need to have compassion also for them. Okay, then now I will mention very important points, which also concludes the very title, separating poison from medicine. So I brought four major points of truth and distortion of that truth, and then you will be able to clearly see and discern that in your approaches to various teachers and teachings. And also it helps you not to, if you see something bad about teacher, not to diminish the true truth behind it. Again, separating gold from the mud. Because if you see toxicity in non-duality circles, when your ego automatically puts the whole non-duality with all of its truths into the category of bullshit, and that is not good, because there are very important wisdom in non-duality teachings. Just as important to integrate your ego, it is also important to integrate those higher truths to have truly holistic, harmonious experience. So here it is. First, where is no good or evil, all is one. True spiritual meaning. In absolute reality, everything is just the movement of energy, and duality, black-white, is product of the human mind. So yeah, it is important to realize that. But here is distortion and manipulation. If there is no good or evil, then my yelling, humiliation, or manipulation is not bad. It is just your narrow mind judging me. This allows the leader to completely absolve himself of moral responsibility. If you feel offended, it is a problem with your dualistic mind, not a consequence of his toxic behavior. Second point, everything is a mirror of you. You attracted it yourself. True spiritual meaning, the world often reflects our inner states, fears, and unresolved traumas, distortion, and manipulation. This is the most dangerous weapon in the hands of such teachers. If a teacher treats you badly, exploits you emotionally or financially, and you start to protest, they will tell you you are just projecting your inner anger, immaturity onto me. I am just reflecting your own darkness. This completely destroys the victim's confidence in their sense of reality. Third point, ego death and tough love. True spiritual meaning, in order for a person to awaken, they must see through the illusion of their ego and let go of attachments. Where have been teachers throughout history, like Zen masters who used harsh methods to shock their students. Then distortion manipulation. The malignant narcissist uses this concept as a free pass for emotional abuse. When he yells at you, humiliates you in front of the whole group, or ignores you, he calls it a spiritual operation. He claims, I am crushing your ego because I love you. If it hurts you, be happy. It means your ego is dying. In reality, he is simply feeding his own sense of power by traumatizing the other person. So yeah, that I experience a lot of those things. So I'm also talking from experience. That is not healthy. And the fourth point, I am completely empty channel, God's will. Through spiritual meaning, the person becomes so calm and pure that higher wisdom begins to flow through him without personal ambition. Then distortion manipulation. The leader claims that he no longer has a personality and personal desires. Everything he does is a sacred flow. His This creates the perfect armor. I have no ego, so I can't be wrong. If I want your money, your body, or your complete obedience, that's not my desire. It is the universe expressing itself through me. So yeah, that is most powerful weapons in psychological manipulation. So yeah, it is very important to acknowledge them, to discern them from the purity of truth. So yeah, it is again how those same truths is being applied, how those same truths are being transmitted, because it is not what creates most of the impact is not what or the result that we seek, but how we walk the path, how much compassion, loving kindness, empathy we can bring into process. This is what creates most of the truly integrally positive impact. But yeah, those other teachers do not realize that, and how it said, justifying their means by the end, because they see, yeah, I done this and that, but I brought you here. Now you are here. Now you get over that blockage or something. So yeah, they are usually oriented by the goals and not by the means to get those goals. And usually, yeah, we are always at war with time. They are always, especially on Advaita non-duality circles, yeah, that spiritual ego, that unintegrated actual ego seeks shortcuts, seeks cheating, their own natural development process. And that leads to not healthy manifestations. Yeah, so ego sees time as its enemy, but pure soul sees time as wise teacher, wise healer, and yeah, and it takes the time that is necessary for integral and truly holistically harmonious growth, even spiritual growth process. Of course, spiritual guidance and spiritual teachings are for shortening the path, because there are many paths that just leads nowhere to the vanity and suffering. So yes, spiritual teachings are for getting us on the right path, but then there is still a path that we need to walk step by step, and minding those steps. Yes, the most progress we do in how, again, we walk the path, how we interact with our loved ones, and so on, how we truly integrate that in this society, those spiritual truths. Here's also a point: how does this affect the leader himself? The spiritual ego is the strongest of all ego types because it is shrouded in cloak of holiness. A simple narcissist, like I mentioned, like a businessman, same applies to politics, can at least sense deep down that he is selfish. The spiritual narcissist doesn't have this chance. His mind instantly translates everything egocentric it translates every egocentric impulse into a holy mission. When a leader like Bentinho Massaro acts strategically, they see it as a divine chess game designed to save humanity. It is a closed psychological loop. The more we are criticized, the more they feel like persecuted messiahs, and the deeper we sink into their illusion. That is very sad. Um, and yeah, I also have some points on how those experiences are valuable, and how also more integrated and harmonious teachers acts versus those other teachers. Because yes, after I left that group. Yeah, I was in 2 years in relationship with them, but the shadow of doubt was followed me throughout many years, and it was a long process to process those experiences, and that is why that scandal around Bentinho Massaro and Mark Vincente's videos, Instaguru, helped me tremendously to put points on those letters. Yeah, now I feel pretty much complete in that process, in the clarity, because yes, I always had those like flashbacks when I remember something that is truly like good lessons that I still can apply and they will work for me, that I gain from that community. So yeah, then I can accept both light and separate from the dark, like seeing also the toxicity and just detoxify myself from that toxicity, but also integrating those good lessons that I gained in that circle. So, why is this experience ultimately valuable? People who have come out of such experiences gain a unique bulletproof psychological and spiritual immunity. So, it's distinction, not an artificial armor bulletproof, but true immunity or resilience. Your internal compass is now calibrated much more accurately than those who have never been lost. You know what imitation of truth sounds like. You have learned to separate information from a carrier of information. It is possible to appreciate deep spiritual insights but not completely accept the destructive behavior of a person who said them. The fact that everything began to fall into place, yeah, there's a bit of dialogue there is going on between me and AI. So I will skip some of the parts. Yeah, I use a little bit of AI to systemize this information, but yeah, it is confirmed by true experience. So it is completely understandable that the shadow of doubt lingers indeed. It would be strange if it had been otherwise. When we encounter the formula of 90% truth and 10% poison in a spiritual system, that 90% is so bright and transformative that the mind automatically tries to justify or ignore the remaining 10. The fact that uh, you, even after leaving your environment, continue to study Bentinho Massaro and read his book is not a mistake or a weakness. It was part of your healing and integration process. You needed time to see the same pattern repeating itself on a global scale in order to finally completely release your psyche from the feeling of guilt. That is why the current wave of Bentinho's debunking brings you such a strong relief, and dotting of the I is it is definitely confirms that your intuition was right from the start, since you now follow yeah, and our conversation continued about other teachers, so I will not go into that. But yes, so there is that formula of 90 and 10. But I see, yeah, that opposite swing when someone, for example, yeah, gets away from such toxic relationships, they can also that, which is positive, as I said, make into complete complete dissociation from that which was actually positive. So yeah, when a person truly healed, he integrates both sides. So here are the points between toxic messiahs and healthy spiritual guides. Responsibility versus dependence. Toxic teacher creates an environment where you can't make decisions without him. He positions himself as necessary intermediary between you and God or truth. If you progress, it is his credit. If you are bad, it is your own fault. Yeah, funny. Healthy teacher. His main goal is to make himself unnecessary for you. He constantly returns you to your own power, encourages you to think independently, and is happy when you outgrow his lessons and move on. So this is the same way how I interact with people that come to me for my spiritual guidance and assistance. So, yeah, I do not try to attach them to myself, but at the same time, I do not force their process. I allow them to return as many times as they need. And I just compassionately, empathically assist again their natural development and growth process. Second point, acceptance of humanity versus grandiosity. A toxic teacher claims to have transcended human boundaries, has no ego, is infallible, or operates from an absolute channel. He hides his weakness, and when those close to him see them, he spiritualizes them, calls healing tough love. Healthy teacher openly acknowledges his humanity, his limitations, and his mistakes. He is not ashamed to say, I don't know, or I am sorry, I reacted from my own personal trauma here. He does not use spiritual concepts to hide his emotional immaturity. And the third point, relationship with criticism and questions. Toxic teacher sees criticism as threat or evidence of low consciousness, responds to uncomfortable questions with attacks, gaslighting, or shaming the follower in front of the group. Healthy teacher welcomes doubts and questions. His spiritual system is so stable that it doesn't need to defend itself against criticism. He allows you to disagree with him. And then finally, the AI commented on my new status as free radical. While inside the system you believe that in order to be free you had to embody those dogmas, now you see that true freedom is the ability to take the gold and leave the dirt. You can read a book by Massaro or any other teacher, take from there wonderful working practices or insights, because the truth remains the truth even if it is spoken by a manipulator, and calmly close the book without any need to worship the author himself or accept the shadow of his personality. You no longer paint the world in black and white, and this is the highest level of emotional and spiritual intelligence. Looking at your current broad spiritual, and again, the conversation goes on other teachers and so on. So that's it from the text. Phew, that was a long one, but yes, I just want to leave it, and hopefully someone will benefit from this information. Maybe someone who is very young and do not know those things, because spirituality is really coming into the forefront of our experience. It is really necessity for our evolution as humanity, so we need to be very aware on that path of spirituality. Again, how we walk that path, and with whom we are walking that path. Maybe someone will see who are also healing or need confirmations, and maybe someone who has this spiritual ego will see that and will have enough curiosity to listen to that. So if you are here, I salute you, I congratulate you. It is really then a powerful stepping stone in your journey. Yeah. So yeah, and also from that, what I read here and what I talked about, we can see how people fall in such traps, because there are genuine truth in those teachings, and we seek to embody those truths deeper, but we do not recognize how the teacher, through his unacknowledged shadow, puts poisons and manipulation together with those teachings. So when we swallow both medicine and poison, and when we need to go through the alchemical process that eventually, at the best, transform us into the even better, more evolved version of ourselves. But of course, there are also dangers that then, at the worst, that toxic side can truly take over and then guide us into destinations where we truly do not desire to end up. But that is also not the end. Even if we fail this life in a sense, it is still valuable experience that our soul will use in its next adventures for its growth. So yeah, nothing is wasted. In ultimate sense, yes, everything serves us. Everything is based on benevolence, and even benevolence eventually integrates into higher benevolence. But since you and I alive here and now, living this life, and most likely will continue this life for many more years, it is important to, yeah, to make the best out of it and use this wisdom, this experience, this knowledge to help others. Because, yes, our experience here matters. This is also another distortion that some spiritual teachers makes about the illusion, like everything is Maya, therefore you are as this person not real, this world is not real, and nothing matters. So, and then usually they guide you to dissolve the illusion, but not to harmonize your relationship with illusion, because illusion truly is not something that does not exist. It is expression of existence, of pure formless existence. It is an eternal counterpart of that which is. So it is sacred. Yes, within that we can create more illusions that can be seen as delusions, like those manipulations against ourselves and others. Yeah, those are toxic illusions that, yes, we need to detoxify from, but still, most fundamentally, illusion, that sense of separation, it is relative separation, but it is still relevant means for God to experience itself. So, yeah, we need to take that in the most loving and caring way. So, yes, this life matters. Your personality, your feelings matters. And how you treat that is the foundation on how you will experience your future, even as the soul. So, yeah, take a good care of your life and those close ones, loved ones around you. And thank you very much for being there for such a long time. It is probably my longest sharing in English. I feel a little bit exhausted from it. And again, maybe it is not translated in a perfect way, but yes, it is transmitted. And I am happy about it. So also feel free to reach out, to comment, express how you feel, how you think about it. I am open for all perspectives. Again, I feel stable in myself, therefore I don't need to fight against anything. And I'm always eager to learn and grow further. So, much blessings. Again, take care and maybe see you later. Bye.